Welcome to the Deedster pod. My name is Monika Martinsson, and today I'll be interviewing an amazing person that is very well oriented in sustainability in general, but also specifically in today's topic, which is transaction-based carbon footprint. But before we dive into that, I've actually prepared a short bio of you, Daniel Dellam. So, are you okay with that?
Okay.
Because you have really dedicated your career to sustainability, Daniel, long before many of us understood how urgent it is to act for the climate. And you are definitely one of the most well-oriented and action-driven people I've met in this field. So I know you started out as a management consultant, eventually heading up your own firm, refocusing it toward sustainability advisory, right? Advising large companies on how to handle sustainability in their core business. I know there was also sustainability research done together with the Stockholm School of Economics by you and professors there. And later you ended up at KPMG, and that's where you created this carbon impact calculator together with Ålandsbanken that later became known as Åland Index. And it was then that you had this amazing idea to start a company, and we have now developed the next gen climate calculator.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think we got the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, a great idea, I must say. But I wanted to start with the basics here. So if we could start with, what is a carbon footprint? What does it mean?
Okay, the person's carbon footprint is basically, adding up all the climate impact from all the products and services that you buy or use, all the way from the raw materials to the production to the usage, and eventually recycling, or in worst case burning, or even putting on landfill.
I know maybe many has been on the website themselves and calculated this carbon footprint, but today's topic is transaction-based carbon footprint. So what's the difference here? Can you guide us in what these two concepts mean?
Yeah, well, the traditional way of calculating a person's carbon footprint is, you ask the person a number of lifestyle questions, or what they bought and what kind of services they've used. And the person would typically fill in a form, and then they would get a number, and they could, use that number, but it would be based on what they actually inputted to that form. With the transaction-based footprint, you could automatically calculate the person's climate footprint based on the buying transactions. So you get a, objective, factual calculation that is constantly kept up to date with your actual purchases, without having to do any manual input of what you bought or what you did.
So more automated. Right. So I understand the urge for climate action, but do we need a carbon transaction-based carbon footprint? Why is that? I think you're going to say that we need it, but why do we need it? How is that going to lead to more climate action?
Well, if we take just one step back and look at every developed country, every country have a average footprint of at least 10 tons CO2 per person, and even up to 20 or even more, meaning that every person every year emits 10-20 tons of CO2, and that is not sustainable. And to reach the Paris targets, we need to come down to 1 ton in just 10 years. And if you also consider that 70 to 80% of what we emit is based on the decisions that we take more or less every day. What we eat, how we transport ourselves, how we heat our homes. So we as individuals have a lot of impact on the climate impact that we have. And not everyone is aware of that. And definitely few know what to do about it.
Okay, and where does that lead us with this transaction-based carbon footprint?
Well, if we can, in a easy and accessible way, give people the insight of their own impact, and also help them prioritize what to do. What is the most impact here, and what can I do about it? Then I think we're starting to see also action taking place.
Right. So I understand what's out of the stuff that I buy, high consumption, or whatever I buy, I can see what has the biggest impact and what hasn't, and that would kind of lead me into a better understanding my own potential here.
Exactly. So if you get the insight, you can also take better decisions, and if you take better decisions, you will also have this rewarding of getting the instant feedback. You see that what I do actually matters.
Yeah.
And if we're many that do these changes, it's going to be huge changes.
Yeah, huge impact. Okay, so this is super interesting, of course. But how then, going into the details, how do we calculate the carbon footprint? What are the driving parameters here in the calculations?
Yeah, well, first of all, it is a sort of a challenging process to get it really accurate. The underlying research of these products are quite well known. So there's a lot of research going on individual products or services, but the quality and the methods are very varying. So the first thing is that you need to get the best data that you can get. And not just global averages, but getting down to the specific markets or geographies. And so you get the best data that you can have. But then you also need to apply that. So you really need to dig into this and see how does that match towards the different transactions.
Right. And it's difficult to get this accurate, you say. There are challenges.
Yes, definitely. I mean, there are a lot of different challenges, but one of the biggest is that based on your bank or credit card data, you only know the amount and where you bought something. And if you only use this raw data, it's going to be very difficult to get a good enough footprint based on that. So you need to take that one step further, or 2 or 3 steps further. And I mean, you start to apply different logic to this. You're adding other data sources. Let's say an example: you buy gasoline, and we can see the amount, but it's not the amount that has an impact. It is the number of liters or gallons of fuel that would have an impact. So then we match that with daily updates of fuel prices. So we can then calculate the number of liters or gallons, and then we can calculate the impact. So we're using the same data, we're adding some other data, and then we can do it smarter translations of that. There are other ways of doing that, singling out different brands or merchants that stand out from the more average of that category, a number of things that you can do. And while the next step is really, and that's where we are right now, it's integrating digital receipts. With the digital receipts, we can get down to individual item level and do the calculations.
All right. And that's important in categories like food, for example, I guess.
Exactly. Food is one of the probably most important one, and that's where we started. And to really see what you bought. There's huge difference between if you bought meat or beans, and you can also start this transition within food because it's something that you do very often, and you can experiment with different habits.
Yeah. Okay. So now I'm really curious, of course, where can I find this transaction-based carbon footprint? It's difficult to say. Transaction-based carbon footprint, because I realize this is really going to help me, I think.
Well, I mean, we hope to see this in many different places on many different digital touch points. But I think one of the most natural places would be in banking app, where you could already have your bank transactions, you have the categories of those, and we can add then the climate impact directly into that. And we want to make it really easy for everyone to understand their impact. So we need to be on platforms where people already are, and not just the most interested people, but really everyone can see this.
Right. And speaking about climate impact and climate action, what are you going to do then? How can we? So I get the data, and then what?
Yeah, exactly. So this insight is sort of the first step, and then you need, of course, to take the climate action. And some of that, though, you will see quite clearly from just looking at your impact or your climate footprint. But the next step, and that's where we've done a recommendation engine, so giving people suggestions and tips what to do. But I guess we can talk more about that later.
Yes, that's a super interesting topic. So we definitely talk more about how tech can help us in this transition. Thank you so much for coming, Daniel, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.